Annual report meeting of the Clay Township Board at 6 p.m. in the John Hensel Government Center. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:03. Mary, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next order of business is public comments, and Gary Dufek is here from the Carmel Fire Buffs. Gary?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's great.
Thanks, Gary.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Gary Dufek. I'm a retired battalion chief with the Carmel Fire Department and also a civilian employee with the city, still in the fire department. But my important job right now, I'm the chairperson for the restoration project of Old Engine 1. This project has been underway since when we found a truck in June of 2017. And basically, our thought from the beginning was to take the truck all the way down to the frame and rebuild the truck back better than what it was new. We've been doing that process all this time. It's been a labor of love of myself, Assistant Chief Jim Martin, Rick Martin, and the two mechanics that work for the city that has helped us along the way. During this process, the hours that we've been able to put into it, we have the cab back on the truck. The truck is drivable. The complete driveline is in the truck. The fire pump is completely rebuilt on the truck. And we're ready to move forward with putting the water tank back on in the rear body. I come before you this evening asking for your consideration for your support for additional funds as we complete this project. I believe that we're over 50% finished with the project, but we have some bigger amounts coming up, putting the body back on and getting it painted and so forth. I ask you consider, if possible, if we could get funding for $25,000 for the project. Our goal is, I don't think we'll make the July 4th this year, but definitely by 2023 the truck will be ready. As you know, with our new building going in, this truck ran out of that old building. Myself, Trustee Callahan, both spent a lot of hours on this truck, so I'm excited to see it back at her home, and it will be the centerpiece of the museum once we get it completed.
Sure will. Yeah.
I did secure over this winter months. I was concerned with the ownership of the truck. The truck is currently registered to the Carmel Fire Buffs, but my concern was in the future, what happens to the Carmel Fire Buffs in the future if they should dissolve for any reason. I worked with the city attorney. We do have an agreement between the Fire Buffs and the city. If the Fire Buffs should dissolve for any reason, that truck becomes first right to the city of Carmel. So that truck will never, ever leave again. It'll stay within the city. That's all I have for this evening. Does anybody have any questions? I would also like to invite you. We're there 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you guys want to see the truck, I'll be happy to show you as well.
Where is there now?
The where is 4925 East 106 at our maintenance facility.
Gary, I think you're not going to get a decision tonight.
I understand that.
But as this has always been touted as the centerpiece of the museum within the building we're constructing, I would advise patience until we see how all the money shakes out over there.
Okay.
But we will talk about this and see what we can do to help you out.
Okay. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
The 25, what's it going towards, Gary? You got an itemized breakdown of that 25 of what's really important and what's, you know,
The
what's-
majority of that money will be going to RPI in Tipton. They're the final piece. As I said, all the bills are paid on the truck. We do have a little bit of money in the bank right now. Everything's paid for on the truck. But the biggest part of that, and more money will go to RPI for the final, getting the body back on it and so forth. And then the last step of the whole truck will be to get it gold leafed.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
thank you.
Next up is approval of minutes from the January 4th board meeting. I'd hear a motion to approve.
So move.
I will second. All those in favor? Aye. And action items pursuant to IC 51376, we will organize a Board of Finance.
Public hearing.
Excuse me, we have a public hearing first.
Public hearing for the bond. Oh, he's got a different agenda.
Not what was in my packet.
Here you
He's
go.
got it revised.
The revised one that came out earlier. Sorry. I got
I'm
I got
good.
one.
I'm good.
Late Friday, I redone it.
No problem.
And it should have at the top revised.
And we're good.
Okay.
We're good. All right. Next action item is to open up a public hearing. Notice of preliminary determination to issue bonds. We'll open up the public hearing at 6:09. Seeing and hearing no public comments, we will close the public hearing at 6:10. Now pursuant to IC 513-7-6, we will organize a Board of Finance. I would nominate Mary Eckert as chairman of that board.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would move to nominate Paul Hensel as secretary of the Board of Finance. All those in favor?
Aye, I second.
Oh, thank you. Seconded by Ms. Eckert. Mrs. Eckert. Oh, gee whiz. We've got a Board of Finance. Ayes.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Finance, and it's 10 after 6, and I'm going to turn to you, Doug. We'll hear what's going on.
Thank you. As normal on our annual meeting, we have the Board of Finance to report our investments. And what I've got here, I'm going to, this is kind of lots of numbers and stuff. I'm going to make it really simple. If you take that and look at it for the financial institutions, is first of all, it's Fifth Third. As normal, they handle all our public funds. And we have 6 funds. Sorry. We have 6 funds that are tied to Fifth Third. It's in our now account, and that is the rainy day, the general, the debt service, the township assistance, fire building debt, and the park and recreation fund, which amounts to $8,904,210.90. And then below that, we have our general obligation bonds, 2019 A through L and 2020 A and B. And these are general obligation bonds, and they are handled through Huntington National Bank. And the amount of that is $24,204,782.24. And these are the projects, the construction projects we are working on at this time, and hopefully will be done over the next year. Okay. Then going down below that, we have Building Corp leases. The first one is with Huntington National Bank, and it's the 2019 A, B, and C leases. And the total amount, this is for construction, is $5,882,587.74. Okay, so again, that's a lease. The second lease, Building Core lease, is through U.S. Bank, and that is a Series 2015 A and B bonds, and that's for the sinking and the Operation and Reserve Fund. That's what's left in there. Then the bottom line item is the Huntington Bank again on the building corp leases for the Series 2015 bond. And that is in the sinking and operation and reserve fund with a total of $411,475.14. So that is our report of investments over the past year. And this closed out at December 31st of 2021.
Thank you, Doug. Do we need to put this in as a motion now? All right, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No nays? And that would close the investment meeting at, I can't see exactly what the number is, but I think it's 13 after. Thanks.
All right, next action item, resolution number 2022-02-15-01, adoption of making preliminary determination.
Excuse me, we need to go back to the AFR, okay, item C, I'm sorry.
Item C.
That's only for the
Gotta
investment,
approve the
I'm so
financial.
sorry.
okay?
Doug, you're on.
Okay, I'm up again, huh?
Yes.
Sorry, Doug.
What I'm going to do is just basically, we have several funds here, as you can see on the front page of your, page 1 and 2 of the annual report. And what I'm going to just tell you is, I told you our through the investments, the report of investments, but the only thing I want to do is talk about 5 of our funds here. The first one is the fire fund, which is the fire fund and the park and recreation fund. So the 1111 fund and the 1215 fund, the monies, remember we closed them out this year or last year because they went dormant. So we moved all that money over to the rainy day fund. There's a resolution you signed, and so we moved that. The next item is the Children's Pavilion Fund, which pavilion fund that we just closed out at the end of the year because that project is completed. So you're going to see zeros in that. And what happens to that money is it is placed in our debt service fund to repay the debt. So any money left over in these funds, it goes back to the debt service fund and repays it. There's 2 other ones that are getting to that point, and that's the Cary Grove Park Fund. We're down to $11,744 on that one, and the Flowing Well Fund, which is down to $33,260. Okay, so over the next few months, we're going to hopefully close those out because those are close to the end themselves. But over this next year, you're going to see more of these funds close out as the year goes along because we're going to complete the object or the project. Okay, unless you have a question about the AFR or anything else, I'm here to answer them. I got our accountant here, Angie Stino. I got my deputy trustee, Debbie Spellbering here, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
All right. Do I need to?
Matt, I got a question, Doug. You answered one of them. We closed out a couple of those funds. When I was reviewing the accounts last month, or beginning of this month, we had a couple of them that they haven't any transactions for a couple months on them, but we're getting feed from a couple vendors, let's say. How quick do we get to close these accounts out? Is there, after the last bill's been paid, 60 days, 90 days? What's the time frame? Because a couple of them, they've capitalized on about $3,000 for the last 3 months.
That's based on their
And
contract.
let me have Angie answer those for you, our accountant.
Thanks, Paul. Angie Stino with Crow. So I would say keep in mind too, some of it is just a timing issue. So you may see some where there isn't any activity, but then additional work continues. So there could be a period where there's a month or 2 without a lot of activity on the construction side, but then those would come in. As soon as we get yes, this project is complete, really working with, Matt and Dave on getting the project done, that's when we would give direction and that Doug would give direction to the trustee at the bank that those accounts will be closed. As Doug mentioned, 11,000 I think was the lowest bank balance as of December. We've continued to get some activity this year. I'll take another look after we process the January expenditures to see what's occurred. And then those conversations, you know, when we start seeing those low balances, we at Crow reach out to the CTI team just to let them know as well, and they provide guidance to us as, yeah, this is where we're at and this is where we expect it to be. But I think as soon as we get, that project's completed, at that point, it comes time to notice the bank trustee, and then those funds then get transferred to the debt service payment.
Motion. I've got a question then. We closed the hearings. Do I need to reopen it? No. Okay, all right. May I have a motion to accept?
I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Action item D, Resolution 2022-02-15-01, adoption of making preliminary determination.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Good to be with you this evening. So this is the first formal step by the board in your 2020 impact bond issue. You've been working with your financial advisors at Crow to put together the timeline that is before you. It's tentative. We haven't decided yet if they're going to be publicly sold or privately placed, but those options are there. 2022. Apparently I'm a couple years behind. Is it 2022? I just woke up. No, I'm sorry, 2022. So the projects that will be funded through this 5.8 maximum bond are Carter Green and Palladium Plaza, the Carmel Historical Society Depot, which is separated out from the new Historical Society building itself, outdoor structures at the Japanese Gardens, some improvements at the Carmel Dad's Club that are not taken into consideration either as part of the Fieldhouse project or the entry project. It's portions in between that will be part of that project. And then there's some general parks and recreation funds available to assist the parks with some of their funding. So the process begins with notice, which was published, of a public hearing, which you conducted. And then you take the first step by adopting a notice of preliminary determination to issue bonds. That will be followed by another public notice, thank you, Luke Kenley, and another public hearing, which is currently scheduled for your March meeting, your March 15th meeting. At that meeting, you'll actually adopt a bond issue and approve documents that will lead us to the sale of the bonds. So with that, happy to answer questions, as is Ms. Stino, I'm sure. And if you have any, we'll be happy to do so.
Is the March 15th based on the time it takes for everything else, or does it have to be a certain, that second public hearing need to be X amount of days away from today, or?
Just the time to get the notice to the paper and have adequate time. We picked it because it was your next regularly scheduled meeting.
Is there benefit to having a special meeting to move things up?
You can. Yeah, we have to redo some things because we've got documents done in advance, but it's not anything.
I guess at the end of the day, does it help fund projects faster, or does it matter?
If you move it up 2 weeks, theoretically, it'll be 2 weeks, earlier on the closing. But again, much of it depends on the public sale. The public and Crow and Angie will make that determination. Is happy to talk about it too, I'm sure. We're working on some other projects together, and the bond market is in flux right now. And Angie may want to talk about that a little bit. So she will help determine, along with the trustee, whether a private placement with a bank or a public process, which is a somewhat long public process, is appropriate. And this this timeline has the long public process incorporated in it for a May 11th-ish closing. So,
Thank you. So I can add. So I think that what Brian mentioned just now was key, is this assumes that we would market these bonds similar to the 2020 A and Bs, where we would go out and to the open market, issue an offering document, get the bonds rated. The reason we've assumed that now in the timeline, one is just because of the fact that it tends to be a better cost of borrowing when you're able to get the bonds rated, and seeing where the market has been moving, especially since December. It's increased quite a bit on the tax exempt side, so we wanted to make sure we had that timeline built in. There is ways we can shorten that if it's a need and a rush to get the project fund sooner. I think we can look at other avenues, and what that would involve as well, because these are general obligation bonds and payable by property tax. You still would want to competitively bid those. However, that would be then really with a term sheet as opposed to a full offering document, unrated, and then sent out to local banks. So I think there's a way for us to shorten that timeline if there's a need to get those project funds in sooner. This really just contemplates all the steps that we would need to take to go through your normal standard process of issuing debt.
We have Dave Ford with CTI here today. Does 2 weeks matter? Seeing a head nod indicating no, I guess we'll proceed.
Can I add one more item? Section 2 of the resolution also makes a reimbursement determination under the Treasury regulations. So if there was, you did need to move forward on something due to pricing or whatever it might be, and the township had other funds available to fund that second portion, allows upon the closing for the funds to be reimbursed in full to the township if that's the desire. And there'll be a similar, I do belts and suspenders. I'll put it in your bond resolution probably too, at least confirming it. So there is an opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, may I add one more thing? You wouldn't want to do that if you weren't certain the bonds, you were going to approve the bonds, right? that you want to be sure you're moving forward with the bonds before you start spending, money out of the bank.
Well, I would hear a motion to approve action item D, the adoption of making preliminary determination.
I make the motion.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution number 2022-02-15-02, adoption of approving additional appropriation.
I'll kick off, and if Angie needs to step in, she can. So this comes from our friends at Barnes & Thornburg, who served as bond counsel for the 2019 impact bonds. Now that we're getting down to the place where, as was pointed out, some of the funds are getting down low, our friends at Crow took a close look at the appropriation language of the original bond issue, and it didn't make it abundantly clear, that the premium, which was paid on top of the principal of the bonds, was also appropriated. So with belts and suspenders, she directed Rick Hall over at Barnes & Thornburg to put together an additional, I shouldn't say that, it's not an additional appropriation, it's an amended appropriation. So we don't have to go through the additional appropriation process. It just makes it more clear.
Thanks, Brian. So that's a good summary. I just want to point out, though, that it's not the township spending more money than was initially contemplated. The appropriation public hearing notice was fine, and that allowed for the premium. It was really just the resolution itself. So we felt it would be good really just to have that something in paper that shows it was amended. That was the original intent. Barnes has put this together, really backdating to that initial March 19 date, just allowing you to continue to spend the proceeds, the money that's in the bank account that you have, relative to the Badger Fieldhouse project. That was the only one where a lot of the bond premium was generated where this was impacted.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Brad. I'd hear a motion to approve action item E, adoption of approving additional appropriation.
I so move.
I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Information items. Doug, 1782 notice.
So we had approval to spend our budget for this year. And one thing, again, and a few more numbers here. Everything that we requested out of the rainy day fund, the general fund, the debt service fund, township assistance, and fire building debt was a total of $8,093,431. It was all approved, and they, if you look underneath each one, it says budget approved for displayed amount. So we're doing some good things, folks. The other thing that they don't approve is our 1215 fund, which is funds that come from the lit money. So, and that's another 2.6 million that the parks get, which makes a total of 10,693,431 as our budget, total budget for the township. Okay, but I just wanted to give that to you like I do annually, so you know that the money we're spending, we're doing it illegally. And if Angie needs to add anything, if I forgot, and everything's going well from that standpoint. I mean, we're very fortunate, and unless you guys have a question about the 1782 notice, that's all I have.
I don't have any questions.
No, at this time.
I have a question, maybe while I got Brian and Angie here.
Sure.
Not about this current one, but, and I know that long-term funding for the parks is going to be an ongoing conversation for a while. But right now, the lit money we received is because it was the last project. We all know that, but and it is committed to parks. But we're not. My understanding is the lit money is not going to completely dry up. When there'll be some lit money still coming in, will that be committed to the parks, or does that need to be?
So there will be lit dollars that will continue to flow to the township. The township will see a significant reduction of those lit dollars once that final distribution that's respective to the 2015 refunding park bonds goes away. Right now, there isn't anything that would require the township to continue using the ongoing lit money for the parks. It would really be needed to fund, as it is now, really supplementing the township assistance and general fund. A lot of what those lit dollars do that are kept by the township not only fund just your ongoing expenses, they also help to subsidize the loss from circuit breaker, because you don't get to collect every single tax dollar that you levy. A lot of those lit dollars really help fund, that loss of revenue in your general fund primarily.
Thank you.
Can I add, Angie and I are stereo speakers tonight, so there's an ongoing conversation, as you are aware. Our firm works with the park board also, and there's ongoing conversations about how to replace these lit funds. I might add something to, something to Angie's explanation. Maybe I will. Back in 2020, no. So your interlocal does require, an amendment to the interlocal requires funds generated by the bond issue to be allocated to parks capital. One could argue that that tail that continues is attributable to the bond issue, even though the bond's been paid off, right? Most of it. Now, also, as of 2020, once the bond is paid off, January 1, 2025, technically the interlocal is no more. The park board is actively working on solutions to that with the city, and will keep the township apprised. There actually was a meeting with the financial planner, or the municipal advisor for the city last week or the week before, and I spoke with Michael Klitzing, and I spoke with Angie right after that regarding some questions. So the city's looking for solutions. It's the park board's hope that a solution can be found that keeps the township very actively involved in the park board, maybe not with 50-50 appointments, but with some appropriate portion of appointments. But the city realizes that it's going to have to step up in some fashion to attempt to fill the bin that's going to be vacated by the lit.
I do want to go on record, because I think Angie and Brian were on the same phone call when the current mayor of Carmel said under no circumstances would he change the board format, and I recorded that